You're listening to the Homeownership podcast by Momentum Realty, real estate talk for buying, selling, and owning property.
Hey guys, Sean Patrick Maloney here, broker owner of Momentum Realty, located in Hanover, Massachusetts. Welcome to episode 28, Fall Projects for Homeowners. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Maloney. Thanks for joining me this week. Unfortunately, we're here to use the word fall. Fall is coming, and it's always good to plan your projects ahead. Fall is a great time to get a lot of work done around the house. One of the main reasons is the fact that the weather is going to get better. It's cooling down, the sun's a little bit lower. It allows you to do some of those projects that you put off during the summer, as well as with the kids going back to school and stuff. You got a little more free time around the house. Gives you the ability to get around the house and do some work. Also, after we come back from that long summer break, we start to notice some of the things we didn't do and the things we put off that started to get a little bit worse over the summertime. So I'm going to give you a list of different things that you can do to your home to increase the value or maintain the value or just keep the place up better. One of the easiest projects to do is to use your pressure washer to clean up the place. You can use your pressure washer in many spots, but one of the things I want to tell you right up front, don't be using it on wood unless you know what you're doing. If you use it on wood and you use it too hard on wood, you'll end up pulping the wood out and it'll have a long stringy look to it. It can do a lot of damage. The other thing is it can end up impregnating the water into the wood, and if you're going to be painting it and you pressure wash it first, you're going to have to wait weeks before it's dry. A lot of people make a mistake with this one. They want to paint the deck, so they pressure wash the deck and then they paint it 2 days later, and then they wonder why it peels. The reality is with wood, it takes on water, so when you hit it with high pressure, you pump that water right into the pulp, it ends up pushing its way back out and pushing the paint off. So let's talk about things that you should pressure wash. One would be your patio set. If you have a nice patio set out there, maybe it's plastic or metal, might be a good time to take the pressure washer to it and clean it up. Another one would be the patio deck or the pool deck. So when I'm talking about patio deck and pool deck, I'm talking about full concrete ones. I'm not talking about patio block. I'm not talking about wood. I'm talking about actual concrete. When you're doing this, always make sure you work it in a neat fashion. Don't just start pressure washing at random. Start at a place and continue to work your way along, pushing the dirt and debris in front of you so you can see what you're doing. A lot of times, if you're not careful with a pressure washer, you can make it almost look like you spray painted the area, because in some areas you pressure washed really close, in other areas you were further away, and what it does is it leads to some areas being really, really clean and other areas being just somewhat clean. So make sure you're always maintaining the same distance and you're kind of working your way along in an area you can see. Another thing is make sure you wear shoes when you're doing this. I know they might get wet, but if you happen to hit yourself in the foot with the pressure wash, you can cut yourself and hurt yourself pretty bad, as well as you can push water into your bloodstream, which is a very dangerous situation. I actually had a cousin of mine decide when we were doing the patio washing one time to test it on his foot, and I don't know, need to tell you where that went, but it went really bad for him. So always remember that pressure washer is a dangerous item, and don't be having children use it unless they're of age where they understand consequences of breaking items as well as hurting themselves. The pressure washer, like I said, it's really not made for wood, so let's talk about what is. There's a bunch of different things you can put in a pump sprayer. There's chemical washers, there's non-chemical organic options, but they're going to be listed in the hardware store as something to clean items like wood. You want to put that in, put it in your pump sprayer, spray it on, and then rinse it off. These are going to work similar to bleaching something, similar to using any other cleaner. It's going to clean the item off. You may use a little rough brush on it, then rinse it down. But again, with the pressure washer, when you're doing wood, you're going to be pumping the water into the wood. It's going to take a long time to dry, whereas this chemical wash is going to clean the surface of the wood. It's going to take off the debris. It's going to bleach out the color. It's going to take it back to what you want without the consequences of having water go into the wood. And then when you go to paint or you go to do water sealer, you should either paint or water seal your deck. When you go to paint or water seal, you're going to end up in the situation where it doesn't adhere because you have a wet surface that you don't even realize is wet because it's actually wet kind of beyond the surface on the inside of the wood. Whenever you have a deck or you have any other woodwork like the house, if you have shakes, you should be using something like a Thompson's water seal or any of the other water sealers. It doesn't necessarily have to be a paint with a color on it. You can use a clear where it just looks the exact same way it does, but what it does is ends up putting a waterproofer on it and the water stays above, because again, water ends up seeping into wood, and when water seeps into wood, in the wintertime, you know what happens. Water expands as it creates ice crystals, and if it's inside the wood, it ends up cracking your deck. I know a lot of people think that just time and everything has caused the cracks in their deck, but most of the time they don't realize the water that's sitting there during the wintertime slowly but surely sinking its way into the wood and then expanding and cracking the wood, which leads to a deck that has a lot of splinters and a lot of issues. Or it also can lead to cupping of siding when you have the siding and it gets wet like that and then freezes. It can lead to the actual shingle itself cupping. And I'm sure you've seen it on many houses and just thought that time did it, but a lot of times it's the enemy of everything, which is water. Water can be really dangerous and tough on different surfaces as far as it's going to ruin things, it's going to cause ice, it's going to do a lot of things, but creating that water seal barrier, you can end up protecting the wood from that. When you're washing with these chemical washes, you do want to pay attention to the fact that they can actually hurt the landscape vegetation. So when you're doing it, you might want to spray before and after all your bushes and lawn around it, because if it has any sort of bleach or anything in that and you use it on a sunny day, it can burn up the leaves on the plants and it can actually kill the plants if you don't dilute it enough. So make sure when you're doing that, you're paying attention to where you're getting that chemical as well as you're paying attention to rinsing it off after. There's another chemical just like this called Wet and Forget that you can spray on the roof. That's a good one to take the roof and actually not power wash or brush it. A lot of people power wash or brush their roof, but what they don't realize is on the asphalt shingles, there's a little bit of almost a glue material holding basically a sand on that, and that's the protective coating for the actual shingle itself. So you want to use a chemical wash on that again. With the Wet and Forget, the reason it's called Wet and Forget is you literally put it in a pump sprayer, spray it up on the roof, and then you leave it. And then as the rain happens and other things happen, it kills the lichen, it kills the moss, the molds, the darkening of the shingles, and every time it rains, the shingles look a little cleaner for about 6 months, and then it's done its job. It's a really good way to protect your roof as well as to make sure that your roof looks good when you're going to be coming up to sell it. It's going to look a lot better than the roof that is covered in lichen, that is blackened and things like that. Not that it affects the roof as much as some people act like it does, but the reality is people like to see a clean roof. While you're up there on the roof and taking care of that, the fall is a great time to clean the gutters. I know a lot of people wait till all the fall leaves come down to clean their gutters, which isn't a terrible idea, but the reality to that is a lot of times you then use the excuse, well, I can't do it because they're frozen. You shouldn't be thinking like that, because cleaning your gutters is a huge, huge deal. And you know, the fall leaves, they're kind of light and they're airy. The water's going to pass through between them. When you're cleaning your gutters, you're trying to clean out the junk that's rotten up there, the things that like dirt and sticks and everything that have built up there. If you clean your gutters once ahead of the actual fall leaf drop, then it's a lot easier during the fall leaf drop to just get up there with a leaf blower and kind of clean them out real quick. If you're going to do them and you're only going to do them once, I would suggest getting them done before late fall. That way they're not frozen. But if you think that, okay, I'm responsible, I'm going to take care of it, then do it then. Cleaning the gutters is actually something that is a huge preventative maintenance item that most people don't realize. So let me explain. When you have full gutters, they build up moisture. When you build up moisture in the gutters, a lot of people don't realize, but you have something called a soffit vent. So you have a ridge vent and a soffit vent on a roof. The ridge vent lets the air go out that's hot. And by doing that, it vacuums in air from the cool, which is down where the soffit vent is. So if you have the sun beating on a wet gutter, creating moisture, and you have a soffit vent just above it letting in air, and then you have a ridge vent sucking that air up, what it means is it sucks up that moisture and puts it on the inside of your roof. And it can lead to different things like mold or other moisture problems throughout the attic. You can end up rotting your utilities up there. You can put a lot of extra corrosion on your wiring. And like I said, worst case scenario, you get mold up there. So cleaning the gutters isn't just about cosmetics. The other one, I think we all experienced it a few years back, it's ice dams. When you have full gutters and they're not draining correctly and you have a big snow load up there and it's melting and cooling and melting and cooling, it's easy for it to freeze up and create what they call an ice dam, which can lead to the backing up of water into the roof and cause you ultimately huge water damage to the home. So always make sure to clean your gutters. This is one that I think is taken very lightly, and this is one that if you are going for sale, clean your gutters, because I can tell you firsthand, I have not yet met a house inspector that does not bring up keeping the gutters clean. They immediately bring it up, and especially if they see like plants up there and stuff, they usually say something along the lines of, this is a sign of a homeowner that doesn't take care of the place. So don't be that person that ends up setting themselves up to have a failed home inspection, but also just good general maintenance to your home is cleaning your gutters. During the fall season, the weather's getting cooler. It's a great time to overseed the lawn. Usually the typical overseed you do at this time of the year would be an aerate or dethatch and then overseed. So aerating is when you poke the holes in the lawn, creating better airway down for the actual roots of the plant. It also spreads out some of the microbial organisms that live in the dirt to help the grass actually fertilize itself. It allows more water penetration into the earth, and then it also allows a place for the seed to hide. Dethatching is when you do like a hard raking across the lawn and you end up pulling up all the thatch, which is the dead grass layer, and it creates an actual surface where you can get down to the ground. A lot of people don't realize, but one of the big things for seed to actually germinate is contact with soil. So the contact with soil and the seed actually creates a better environment for it to hatch, and it ends up creating a better grass. So overseeding the lawn at this time of the year is a lot better. Usually I suggest doing it in late August. That way there you can get the sprinklers going and you can keep it moist. It's really tough coming June, July, August because of the fact that the sun's so high in the sky and it dries it out so quickly. So overseeding in the fall is really good because it gets going, then has the winter, and then in the springtime when it gets going again, it has somewhere in the 8 to 10 weeks before people are heavily using it. One of the things that's tough about a spring overseed compared to a fall overseed is the fact that we're going to immediately have demands on the lawn. We're going to have that 4th of July party. We're going to have the kids out on the swings and everything like that. We're going to have people running around on the grass, maybe playing soccer. That's really tough on young grass. So a fall overseed gives the grass a lot of time before it's actually going to have the same demands it does. So keep that in mind. It's a great time of the year to do that. Another thing that you can take care of at this time of the year is trimming those shrubs. Some of them you don't want to trim because they're going to flower, but a lot of them it's a great time of the year to get them trimmed up and to have it all neat right before the winter time. Trimming the shrubs before the winter can help stop as much breakage as well. If you have big, long boughs and branches and you have a lot of snow, you can have heavy breakage where you lose parts of your shrubs and they get crushed. The other thing you can do is if you have a snow load problem, you can build a little wooden hut around the shrub just to protect it from getting crushed by the snow, or you can wrap them in burlap to keep them away from getting frostbite if they're out in an exposed place like on the water or somewhere else that you're going to have high wind where they get what they call desiccation, which is where they sweat during the wintertime, but they're not sucking up any water, so they end up drying out the actual shrub itself. But again, trimming the shrubs is something very simple. A lot of home inspectors bring it up in the long run of things just because of the fact that untrimmed shrubs lead to keeping the woodwork or the foundation wet, as well as they can act as an entry point for bugs. The other places around the doorway, if you have shrubs that reach out, they actually can give you ticks. A lot of people don't realize this one, but when you have the shrubs reaching in, you're walking in and out of your house, you can have ticks jump on you right there. So it is a good time to actually push those back and keep them in place. One thing about trimming the shrubs on the regular is it can save you a lot of money. Trimming the shrubs is fairly easy. If you don't trim the shrubs for a lot of years in a row, they grow too big. It ends up leading to the point where you need to rip them out and replace them. Trimming the shrubs is far easier than removing them and replacing them, and it's a lot less expensive. It's a pretty easy job to do yourself. You can go down to the Home Depot or Lowe's and grab yourself a set of trimmers, maybe a set of hand pruners, and go out there and take care of them. And for less than $30-$40, you can end up having a whole new look to the outside of your house. And it's one of those things with pride of home ownership. It really feels good when you look at it. It's like a fresh haircut. They look amazing the moment you do it. So it's something you'll get a lot of value out of, and you'll certainly appreciate yourself. Another thing you can do trimming-wise is a lot of times over the summer, throughout the year, those big trees around the edge of the lawn start to move in. And if we're not careful, slowly but surely the woods will swallow our backyards and side yards. So the fall is a great time of the year to get out a pole pruner and to reach up and to trim off those low branches. I'm not telling you to try to take down huge trees or anything, because I do believe that belongs in the tree professional industry, and it is a dangerous job when you're doing that. But those branches that are reaching in, if you keep nipping them off while they're small, you'll never have that situation where you need to hire somebody up until you get past maybe the 14 to 21 foot range, because you're going to use a pole trimmer. And notice I'm not saying to cut branches off of a ladder. I'm telling you to do it with a pole trimmer. Trimming branches off a ladder can lead to the branch swinging down, hitting the ladder and knocking you off of it. And it's actually the highest danger rate in tree industry. I owned a tree company, and I can tell you I used to read the statistics. And every year, the majority of all injuries had to do with using ladders in tree service. If you notice, when you look at tree companies, they barely ever use any ladders. And if they use a ladder, they use what's called an orchard ladder, which is a different shaped ladder with a single leg off the back. and they don't use it to cut big branches. They climb the tree, they use bucket trucks and other things, they use pole saws, but they never do big tree removal off of ladders. And that's why, like I said, if you keep trimming it back with a pole pruner and you work your way back just so that they never get large, you won't have to call them in until you have bigger problems. But trimming back the outside edge line can really make the yard look larger, and it can save the grass along the edge from dying from overshading, as well as it can push back those ticks and mosquitoes that hide in that low brush line. While you're out there in the fall, it's a great time to clean out the shed. The shed's an item that we always just stuff everything in, and coming up towards winter, we're going to be putting the yard furniture and everything, and it's easy to just totally pile it in. One of the things about having a messy shed is it can allow the critters to hide in there. If you keep your shed pretty organized and neat, and you always maintain some sort of insect barrier, you're not going to have issues. But if you pile everything in your shed in and out all the time and you leave it wet, you're going to end up leading to decay of the shed. You're going to lead to end up having insects, maybe termites and other things that are actually eating your shed. So keeping a clean shed, not only is it nice looking and easier to work with, it also can be a preventative maintenance item that can keep you from having to buy a new shed in the future. And the shed is an item where not always are we so picky about it because it's out back, but it is something where you spent a lot of money on it, so maintaining it well is good. The other thing is the items we're putting into our shed, if we're stuffing everything on top of each other, it can lead to damage of the yard furniture, or you go to take things out in the spring and they don't work correctly. So cleaning out the shed's a big one. Lots of towns have a town dump that you can bring items to. Some of us have local trash pickup. The other item would be to order a dumpster, and if you order a dumpster, maybe you clean out the shed, the attic, and the basement all at the same time, and just do a fall cleaning. It's a great time of the year to do it. The weather's right, it's cooler, it's easier to work, you can leave the doors and windows open while you're doing it. It's a really nice time to get things done. Another project that's great in the fall is painting. Painting is something where you want to have some windows open, you want to have some airflow, so that fall air is a great time to do it, and the fall air tends to be dry. Spring air tends to be a little bit wetter than the fall air, so with a nice dry fall air, it's a great time to plan. One of the things that most people don't think about is painting their bulkhead. The bulkhead is an item that is made of metal and tends to rust. The good thing is Rust-Oleum and other companies have created these metal paints that are primer based, and they don't actually need to have any sanding done or anything as long as you didn't let it get too far. So if you go in, you buy some rusty metal primer from Rust-Oleum or another company, and then you buy a can of spray paint, and maybe a few hours work, you can totally rehab that bulkhead and make sure that it doesn't rot out. I know during home inspections, this is another item that comes up commonly because people don't do anything to the bulkhead, and then they end up having to replace it when they sell it to the next person because it's leaking water. The reality is that's a multi-$1,000 mistake over an item that would cost maybe 2 or 3 hours and $20 at the hardware store to keep up. So painting your bulkhead every 5 to 10 years is going to be a good one. Other one to keep up with is trim work. If you can paint it, if it's a 1-level home, if it's a 2-level, you're not comfortable on ladders, maybe you wait and hire in a professional. But another great place to paint in the fall would be the interior rooms. It's a great time to get out there and just paint all the interior rooms and get them done. Last but not least, let's talk about sealing the driveway. Sealing the driveway is a good one to do that we need to watch out for the heat. A lot of people want to do it in the summertime, but they don't realize most items don't like to dry in the extreme sun and extreme heat. When you paint or you seal or you put down epoxies or anything, it's nice to have them dry quickly, but there is a such thing as drying too quickly. So sealing a driveway jet black in the middle of the summertime can lead to it actually cooking it, baking it, and then it end up flaking and peeling in the future years. So the fall is a great time of the year to clean up all the cracks, blow the driveway down, trim back the edges, and seal the driveway. When you're sealing the driveway, make sure to buy some crack filler. Fill those cracks so the water isn't penetrating its way down there, and seal them together. So if you put the crack filler down first and then you seal the driveway after, it's going to lead to a nice solid coat, and it's going to help you keep that asphalt nice for years to come. Driveways are a really important part of everyone's lifestyle. A lot of people devalue it because they just park in it, but the reality is when I'm looking at homes, it's the first place the feet hit. It's like the original presentation of the home. When you pull in, immediately people look at the driveway. You might look at a driveway as a place to park. The next person might look at it as a place for the kids to roller skate. So depending on what you use for your driveway it's all going to have different needs, but the reality is keeping a nice driveway is going to get your home better value in the long run when you do sell it, and it's going to give you more usability during the time where you own it. I hope these fall projects work out well for you. Maybe you can make a to-do list out of this, or maybe you can just listen to the podcast each week and do 1 or 2 at a time. Don't get overwhelmed by projects, but just remember this. You're better to do 1 or 2 projects than to realize you haven't done anything in the past 10 years and have to do it all at once. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or you want to talk further about any of these projects, feel free to reach out to me through direct message, personal message. You can email me, call me, whatever works best. And remember to follow the podcast. Thanks for joining us this week, and we'll talk to you next week.